Hello, Nushin. Can you hear me? Just testing my microphone. Hello, Martin. Nice to see
Hi,
you.
Peter. Hi, good to see you.
Can you hear me properly and so on?
Yes, perfect. What
Good.
about my side? You hear? You can
Yes.
hear me? Yeah, perfect.
Okay. I was just checking, especially since I'm chairing, I thought I should
Yes,
make
of course.
a little check. We're still waiting for Nika to join. So until then, I'm
Sounds good.
handling some emails. But
Hmm.
looking forward. Where are
Yeah.
you currently?
Well, I live and work in Canada, in Montreal, but
Yes.
and you can hear it, I was born and raised in Germany,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then
Yes.
long story, kind of, I will not tell you my life, but life is unpredictable, and now
Hmm.
I ended up in Canada, and it's not bad, Canada. I like it,
Hmm. I've
But
only
I
been
don't,
there once, and
yeah,
it was also beautiful. This was in for the conference in
in Montreal, right?
yeah, exactly.
Just October. Yeah, yeah. No, it's a good city.
Hmm. Hmm. But it must be a bit. No, I guess it's morning for you currently, or
Now it's 9:22. So we
Okay.
are 5 hours behind UK.
Yes. Yeah. So that's humane.
Yes, yes, yes.
Time of day.
That's perfect, you know.
Yeah.
And you are based in Denmark, right?
Yes.
Well,
Although I'm actually say again,
how do you pronounce it? Or Aarhus?
and it's Aarhus.
I see. That's
Exactly.
why
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Exactly. It's the double A becomes O in Danish.
oh
Then and then the R
yeah,
is soft, so
yes,
it
yes,
almost isn't there. Hmm.
yeah.
But I'm actually moving Wednesday next week to Switzerland, Zurich, which
So
is quite
which
exciting to me.
university? Is it
E-
ETH?
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. Is it a
Hmm.
visit or is it a program? Oh, I
It's
can't forget.
a 2-year postdoc with Klaas Stefan, he's called. So he have a computational psychiatry center there
Yes, yes.
that
And
I'm
I
very
guess
privileged and happy to
yes,
to go to.
you are, you know. But be prepared. I was there, I think last December. Very pricey, very
Yeah, yeah.
pricey, you
Yeah, I
know.
read
So
online that it's the most expensive city on earth to live in on average.
could be, could be. No, it's very pricey, you know. And
Yeah,
I think everything is pricey. You know, it's not only rent or real estate, but also restaurants. You know, a small coffee. I don't remember, but I was shocked. Something like six
yeah.
euros, something like this. You know.
Uh, I've only, yeah. My partner
But
is
Peter,
Swiss.
here's the good story, and then I shut up. I don't want to distract you too much. You know, this is everybody as you know. So I was hosted by a professor, and
Mm,
and it's always the same question. So how do you make up with these living expenses? The good
mm,
news is the salaries are even better.
mm. Okay.
You know?
So that is good news indeed.
That's good news, you know.
Yeah. Hmm. It's
You know,
always
but
wild to move countries like this where everything, including what money, like what the salaries and costs and only almost what money means changes and together
yes,
with
as a rule of thumb, because I moved a lot by accident, by design. A rule
mm,
of thumb is, you know, so rent or mortgage should not be
mm,
more than 1/3 of your net income. So if you go to Zurich and you want to know how is your income compared to expenses, so I guess you start renting something, the rent should
mm,
not exceed 1/3 of your net income, so after tax. Then you are in good
mm,
shape. So for instance, if it's more than 50%, you will be struggling financially, you know.
mm, mm,
That's a good rule of thumb,
mm,
you know.
mm. Thank
Or
you.
reverse engineering, you know, you have your
Yeah,
income, your scholarship, and then take 1/3, and this should do for your accommodation, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Then you still have a life, you know.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I've heard something like this before. This 1/3 rule.
Yeah, it
Uh,
works. It's a
yeah,
truth.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's,
But Peter, as I said, now I shut up. You know, I don't want to distract you from your duties. You know.
but thank you. It's pleasant
Yeah,
talking a
yeah,
little. Yeah, I'm sure
yeah.
Nika will come soon, and then we'll check that.
Let me check my emails. Maybe she has sent an email to me.
Yes. Yeah, I was also
Yeah.
just checking whether anything has come in on
No,
my side.
no email.
I mean, we have some minutes. Hello, Jihe. Yeah. Um, I would love to try to pronounce your name, but I'm not sure I'm able to do it right. Would you mind saying how your name is pronounced?
Hello. Oh, my name is Chihite. I think your pronunciation is correct.
Jihe. Okay. It's nice to
Yeah,
meet you.
nice to meet you too.
Is it what kind of language is this name?
Oh, it's a Korean.
Korean. Jihe. Okay, that's helped me a little bit. I don't speak much Korean, unfortunately, but it's good to place it.
I've been in Korea just 2 weeks ago.
Mm, amazing. Where were you in Korea?
It was uh, 4 universities, so most of them in Seoul, So it was SKKU, it was SNU, HNU or KU, and then one university outside in the south, KNU. So all these
Okay.
acronyms,
Yeah, for sure.
you know, but I liked it a lot, you know. But Peter, now I'm quiet.
Yeah. I'm also trying to just bid people welcome. I have not met Jihi before, so it's
Mhm.
always just nice to. Jihi, by the way, I'm Peter, and I'm the chair today, so my job is just to make sure that all the technical things work and that Nika feels welcome when she
Where is
comes. Jihi, are you in Korea now, or where are you based?
Oh, sorry, I was away from the desk.
All right.
Right now I'm in Seoul.
Mm,
And I'm a prospective PhD student of the Professor Lim in South Korea.
amazing.
Yeah,
Seoul is
thank
a
you.
wild city. I've only been there one time. And Martin was just saying he's also been there recently, 2 weeks ago.
I was just
Oh,
there. I was there 2 weeks ago, G. You know, it was a little speech tour. It was in Seoul, it was SKKU, SNU, that's the Harvard of South Korea, I was told. And then you have another one, HKU, and one outside Seoul in the south, KNU.
oh, that's cool.
Yes,
Mm.
it was my first time in South Korea.
I see.
Which
Mm.
university are you affiliated with, Jihi?
Oh, so I'll be a student of SKKU.
Ah, that's where my host was. So my host is Professor Wan Su Lim.
Oh
Maybe you
yes,
know him?
yes, that he will be my professor. Yes.
No way.
Oh,
This is a small world.
Oh, actually, he invited this me to this seminar.
mm. Interesting. Then I hope you find it interesting. I do not know these. I forgot the name already. Lin was the surname, right?
Oh,
I'm not
yes, he
familiar with Professor Lin.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
What kind of
Wan Su
work
Lim.
does he do? And Wan Sulin, thank you, Martin. What kind of work
Oh,
will he do, or will you do with him?
um, oh well, I've been in the industry for a while and I worked as a AI engineer.
Mm,
Oh,
exciting.
very good. Jihi,
Will he
It's been
also?
please, Jihi, please ask questions, you know, especially given your practical background. I'm an academic, you know, through and through, you know, so this is would be great. Oh, Osman, I see Osman. I know Osman very well.
Hello, Osman.
Hello.
Hi, Osman.
Hi, Martin. How are you? Hello.
Very good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Greetings from
Yeah,
old Berlin.
yeah, yes.
And here we
Do
have
you already
Nika.
have, Osman, do you already have snow in Berlin?
Actually, today feeling -3. Snow will be tomorrow, I think. We are
Oh,
expecting.
Hi,
Hi there.
Hi, Nika. Good to see you.
Hi. Good to
Sorry to
see
interrupt
you.
Martin and Osman, but now I will direct my attention to the speaker, just so we can check that the screen sharing and
Yeah,
if you have
yeah,
any
sure.
videos, the sound works. But it's good to see you, Nika. Been looking forward to
Thank
today.
you. You too.
Sorry for the rude interruption, Osman and Martin.
oh,
No worries, no worries.
We see your screen perfectly, and maybe we
Okay,
can
yeah,
try it in slideshow mode as well.
like here. Okay, and I have to assign remote control to Professor Maier.
Okay.
why am I supposed to give the, and I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
No,
so
Nika,
we will use
Nika,
just. Oh, second.
Sorry, Peter. We rehearsed twice. Nika and we rehearsed twice. I think we are well prepared.
Perfect. I'm very excited.
Okay.
We will just use Nika's computer, or will we switch screens at some point?
No, my computer with remote control. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Let me find it.
And also, I'll just confirm that we're recording the meeting and we will make it public. Is that fine with you? Good.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
And we'll send you the link afterwards.
Thank you.
Nika, am I supposed to?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I don't know why don't I see the options as usual. Option of remote control. I
It may
always
be
see it open
because.
screen.
Did you find it? Or what did you say?
No, I didn't find it yet.
It may be because of some settings in the Zoom meeting room. Is it through Zoom that you would do the
There was
remote
an
control?
option remote control on the top of the screen in my, but here I only have a slide control and annotate. I don't know why this happened.
It might be Martin. If you also see this green box at the top where it says you are viewing Nika Hosseini's screen. Do you see this?
I see her screen, yes.
So there's a view options button to the right of it.
I
Yes.
gave a slide control to Professor Maier. Can we check if it works?
Okay, I check.
Yes.
I check. Yeah, I think it works, Nika. You know,
It works. Can you change the slides?
let me check. No, it control Nika slides. It's here. Okay. That's it.
Okay.
It looks different. I only need my cursor. So where can I find my cursor? It looks different than yesterday.
Yeah, because the option of remote control was not there, so I gave you only a slide control.
That's
So
okay.
the cursor is here, but I don't think you can control the cursor. I don't know
Yeah,
why this option is no longer available.
I just use this cursor. That's fine.
Okay.
You see my cursor, right? Moving in circles.
No.
No, we don't see it.
Oh.
But you may be able to.
Hold on. Can you see it now?
No.
That's not good.
Not yet. Hi, Carl. Welcome. So I am able to request remote control from Nika, but it may be because I'm the host of the meeting. Is having the cursor important, Martin, or is it not so important?
I really like to
Then
have my cursor if possible. If not, don't worry.
then I would suggest if you see the green box at the top, you are viewing Nika Hosseini's screen, etc. There's a view options button next to it.
Yes, I do see, yes.
If you press the view options button, is there an option to request remote control?
Standard multi-speaker. No, it's not. No.
So then I believe it's because I'm the host of the Zoom room that I can request her from remote control. Therefore, I will just make you the host, Martin, and we will see if this helps.
Okay.
So you are now the host. See if this
That's me.
changes anything.
Okay. Let me. Okay. Yeah, this is technology.
Yeah. This happens sometimes.
Now it's even worse. I cannot change slides. But I have a backup plan, you know. I've seen it all, you know. I can share my slides.
Okay.
So whether, you know, shall I give it a try?
Yeah, let's do that. So then we will just switch the.
Let me stop share. Yeah, I did it.
Okay.
It's probably simpler. I mean, these remote control things are very useful, but they are always a bit risky, I feel, when I try them.
So give me a sec.
Yes.
So, and now share. The primary unknown share. Open system settings. Hey, and I have to go to the settings.
Okay. You will probably have to leave the Zoom room and come back in, but I will just admit you.
Okay, so I'm leaving. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay.
Perfect. Where are you physically, Nika? Are you in Canada as well?
Toronto. I'm in Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So it's
Professor
in the
Maier is in Montreal. Yeah.
yes, I said.
Yeah.
So it's in the morning for you also, but hopefully not too
Yeah,
early.
yeah. It's 9:30 in the morning. 9:37. Yeah. We
So
have a
it's
5-hour difference, right?
yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I'm currently in Denmark myself, so there's a 6-hour difference.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
Welcome back, Martin.
I'm back. Okay. Let's give it another try. So there's something opens. I think I cannot fix it. I don't know what the issue is.
Is it
With
complaining
Karen?
about the
Zoom. Okay. Use password. So I give it one try. Quit and reopen. I have to leave the meeting. I'll be right back. Okay.
perfect? It's always frustrating with these things, but it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Martin is your Nika. He's your supervisor.
Supervisor. Yeah. Yeah.
I was worried of getting it wrong.
He's my supervisor. I'm a third-year PhD student.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And Osman is part of your group also, or you just know each other?
Actually, I'm a researcher in TU Berlin and the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany,
Okay.
in Berlin.
Yes.
But I visited this summer to Martin in Canada,
Yes.
and we
I see.
worked also applied some techniques, active inference to communication networks. So that's why he
Exciting.
invited me.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah.
We can see your screen, Martin. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
Lucky you, I can't see anything. So what is it? It's good, already good. Your side is taken care of. I cannot see my screen. Should be somewhere.
We see your browser currently. So that may.
Yes. Okay, I close this one. This can be closed. So, and now, do you see them?
Yes, perfect.
Full screen?
Yes. Everything is
Okay.
So during that presentation, we switched slides. Okay.
yes. That's good.
Okay.
I think that's a good solution.
Okay.
Okay, then I will invite Nika to share her screen first, and also
No,
just
Peter, I go first. I go first, then Nika.
Yeah. He goes first.
perfect. Okay, my apologies. Well, then there's nothing left except to officially invite both Nika Hosseini and Martin Maier, who are presenting for us today on work they do on collective intelligence. That looks very exciting. I had the pleasure of meeting Nika at the Active Inference workshop this
The
year.
pleasure was mine. I was so
And I have since then been looking forward to this presentation.
Thank you.
And
so much.
so Martin will present first, and then Nika will take over. I'll keep an eye on the chat, and then there will be some time for discussion and questions, and in the end, Carl will summarize. Yes, thank you. And the stage is yours, Martin and Nika.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thanks for having us. So this talk will explain the link between Charles Darwin's root brain and Nikola Tesla's 6G world brain. But to get started, our starting point is the human brain and Simon Sinek's human brain inspired concept of the golden circle, which states that people should communicate from inside out, meaning starting with why, followed by how and what. Given that we are two people, two presenters, I will take care of the why and what, and then Nika will dive into the technical details on the how. So here's Nikola Tesla, and he has made this famous prophecy that when wireless is fully applied, the Earth will be converted into a huge brain. This has been, of course, decades ago, but with the emergence of 6G and beyond networks, we might get to this stage of realizing an AGI native telecom brain. This is due to enabling technologies such as joint sensing and communications, which enables a distributed sensing environment. So this sensing, this perception arc, this is very feasible. And current research focus is really on this action arc. So more specifically, AI embodiment and agentic AI. And you can see here, this will give rise to a gigantic global action perception loop, very similar to active inference. However, the authors, and these are really leading 6G researchers, they proposed this AGI native telecom brain in this paper, which is available as early access paper on IEEE Explorer. I read it twice, I searched twice, and surprisingly, the term active inference is not mentioned once. Likewise, the name Carl Friston is not mentioned once. So even though there are stellar researchers on 6G, they are not aware of active inference, let alone Carl Friston. Instead, they propose a new G of networks driven by this brain, and this is entirely based on computer science approach, more specifically Yann LeCun's vision of a modular cognitive brain architecture. Of course, we pursue a different approach. We follow Carl Friston's active inference framework. And also their goal is to realize AGI with the overarching end goal of having common sense. In our research, we follow MIT's human AI strategy, leveraging on humans' inherent capability of common sense understanding of the real world. So the human AI strategy is very simple. So what would happen if we replace AI neurons with real people? Each person equipped with a brain instead of a single neuron. But it's not only people which will be interconnected in the coming age of hyperintelligence. There will be new hyperintelligent cybernetic organisms that will emerge from existing AI systems that think thousands, then millions of times faster than us. The interesting parts are these two items. These cybernetic organisms will live together with us human beings in a mutually beneficial symbiosis. And these cybernetic organisms will regard us humans as we now regard plants. This seems to be bad news, but it's an invitation for us to explore this evolutionary continuum of human and more than human intelligence found in nature, specifically this so-called wood wide web. Wood wide web is, of course, an anthropomorphic term. The more ecologically correct term is mycorrhizal networks. And this is Greek. It consists of two Greek words, rhizal, that means roots, and myco, this is fungi. Okay, so these are two different species living in symbiosis. Here you can see different types of symbiosis, and we are very much interested in mutualism. So it's a mutually beneficial symbiosis, but there are also negative ones such as parasitism. This symbiotic flora-fungi mutualism forms a new research field. It's highlighted down here. And it's really two species coming together, flora, that means plants, and these aforementioned fungi. So fungi, they form invisible fungal links, and which are active cables. So they are alive, and they perform a number of processes, such as branching, homing, and in doing so, they create brain-like structures. And this has been witnessed or observed many years ago by Charles Darwin, and he coined this underground network root brain. So this term root brain goes back to Charles Darwin, and this is something where we take inspiration from. More interestingly, these fungi interconnecting roots of different trees are metamorphic agents. That means they can metamorph into mushrooms and intreat the space above ground. Okay, so this is really, it's very interesting agent. It's a biological agent being able to perform metamorphosis like a form of embodiment. And above ground, they also engage in activities. So they disperse themselves by means of spores. This is a big picture. Don't worry, you don't have to understand all the details. I keep it simple here. So our goal is to realize the world brain. And we are interested in shifting from AI to a broader scope of artificial naturalness, evolution, and life. To do so, we try to mimic the root brain through a specific type of biomimicry. It's called symbiomimicry. So that's a biomimicry of symbiosis. And in order to replicate the root brain in the digital area of the future metaverse. This gives rise to so-called lifelike digital organisms. And to realize them, the convergence of digital evolution with biology is instrumental in creating these lifelike cybernetic organisms. One example of such lifelike cybernetic organisms are our cyber fungi, and they symbiomimic fungal networks transfer of resources from areas of abundance to scarcity, from larger plants to smaller plants. So this might be a little bit surprising. So it's not based on competition, but on cooperation. Why is that? It's entropy. Entropy is nature's hidden force driving life to equilibrium. This is the driving force behind these processes. Now, the interesting twist is we use generative AI to change the laws of physics. As you might know, according to thermodynamics, entropy must grow or at least stay equal. And we use generative AI to play with entropy. So we can arbitrarily increase or decrease entropy. This is illustrated here. So we can increase entropy or reverse time entropy. And to do so, we use a specific type of generative AI called diffusion models. And this gives rise to a new research field. We are really focusing on human cyber fungi mutualism. And we all put it in the context of the metaverse and really entreat the physical real world. And it's through a sporulating platform, which we call, in quotation, magic mushroom. To do so, we use generative AI, and it is used to dynamically couple two types of life cycles, namely on one side, plant life cycle, on the other side, the mushroom life cycle. These cyber fungi perform two types of function. First, providing an underlying structure. So the cyber fungi uses generative AI to hallucinate a specific type of network structure, which are known as scale-free networks with small world properties. But fungi, being a metamorphic agent, can also embody itself and become a mushroom. And above ground, so to speak, in the physical world, both plants and mushroom engage into in a certain type of agency. There are two types of agency: cross-pollination between plants and actuation of these spores, which are dispersed by mushroom. So a specific example of what a pollen and spore might be: pollen might be the spreading of social norms, new social behaviors, and spores are, in our work, equivalent to teleological tokens. So teleology comes from Norbert Wiener's cybernetics. It's a core concept, and it can be realized by means of purpose-driven tokens widely used in blockchain networks. Generative AI, there are different types of generative AI. We focus on OpenAI's improved DDPM. DDPM stands for denoising diffusion probabilistic models. It has two processes: a forward process called diffusion and a backward process called denoising. The diffusion process creates an increase in entropy, so increasingly more disorder, and the reverse process, denoising, reduces entropy. DTPM has been devised for a completely different context for image generation. And the trick was, and Nika will further elaborate on this, we had to translate, adapt DTPM to our root brain context. So we have the two processes of DTPM, forward diffusion process, backward denoising process of DTPM. And each process is used to biomimic a different aspect of these fungal networks. So the forward process is used to biomimic the branching process and exploratory tendency of fungi. Conversely, the backward process is used to biomimic the fusing and homing processes of fungi. Then, of course, we also developed the same processes using active inference. So this is the graphical model. Nika will further elaborate on the details. And then we were interested in comparing conventional generative AI with active inference. To do so, we needed to define a certain use case. Our use case was we were considering a group of 64 humans, and one human starts performing a new behavior, and we were interested how long it takes till this new behavior is propagated throughout the entire population. So one metric was simply the time units it takes to spread a new behavior throughout the entire population. And then we have a second metric on the right-hand side. It's like a cost function. So whenever a couple of humans adopt a new behavior, there's a cost involved. It's a token. So every participating human is awarded one token. And then we have on the x-axis, you have to read it from left to right. This is the forward process of generative AI. And from right to left, that's the reverse process. I will break it down for you. So this is the first metric. It's simply the time units it takes to spread a new behavior throughout the entire population. We start with the forward process. These are the solid blue lines. We have a simple parameter R. This is simply the spreading probability that a new behavior is jumping from person A to person B. And then the process starts. You see the number of time units quickly drops, hits a plateau, peters out. And then we enter the second process. So this is from right to left. This is the dashed red line. And the interesting part, what happens at the end of the reverse process, you can see here, it stays flat and minimum, independent of whether the spreading probability is high or low. Then we also accounted for the second metric. This is the cost function. So how many tokens we have to spend in order to incentivize the spreading of a new behavior. I explained this graph a little bit quicker. So again, we have the forward process. These are the solid lines, the green lines. And then the reverse process are the purple dashed lines. And the interesting part is on this side, so keep this in mind. So all these curves hover over roughly 2,500 tokens. So 2,500 tokens, keep this in mind. And then for comparison, we did the same using active inference. Again, first try, we were interested in the time units it takes. And you can see here, it's comparable. It's a little bit better, but with generative AI, we had 2 time units. Here we really reached the absolute minimum of 1 time unit, but 1 or 2 time units are comparable. The main difference between active inference generative AI comes in terms of the cost tokens. And you can see here, it's 1 order of magnitude smaller than generative AI. So instead of 2,500 tokens, it's only 250 tokens. So it's really a difference of 1 order of magnitude. The question was why, and then we looked into the belief update across the process. And these peaks are simply so-called aha moments. And you can see here the dashed yellowish line. This is generative AI. There's one belief update, and that's it. Whereas active inference is really capable of performing this HEI characteristic of lifelong learning. then, and this is the small part of my second part of my introductory part, and then Nika will take over. So we posed this research question: is there a way to enrich the lifelong learning process? And this naturally leads us to psychedelics. Okay, so it's a nascent intersecting area of generative AI and psychedelics. So AI is not only used as biomimetics, but also psychedelic mimetics. So AI tries to mimic the cognitive mechanisms activated by psychedelics, but because this is active inference group, psychedelics, as most of you know, it's also very, very interesting for resolving the darkroom problem. So as you might know, surprise minimization leads to this recurrent puzzle known as darkroom problem. This is kind of biological agents performing active inference more sooner or later end up in this darkroom problem. Now, the interesting part, there's also another term, brain's dark energy. It turns out when a biological agent disengages from the external action perception loop, parts of the brain consume up to 20 times higher energy when at rest. Nika will show you a number of different types of rest states. So in our take is actually the darkroom problem is not a problem, it's more an opportunity to seek these dark rooms and then shut your eyes and turn your attention from outside inside. Of course, there has been work done by Professor Carl Friston by combining a free energy principle with entropic brain theory. This is all known, REBOS. It stands for Relaxed Beliefs Under Psychedelics. So psychedelics really have two benefits. First, it widens the free energy landscape, but it also flattens the minima. So, and this is something we are really currently focused on our research efforts. We want to advance active inference from biological agents context to psychoactive agents. And plants produce three types of psychoactive agents, namely stimulants such as caffeine, sedatives such as opium, and most interestingly, hallucinogens such as psilocybin. And the interesting part is that only the third one, the hallucinogens, induce a state of mental plasticity. And this is what is harnessed by psychedelic neuroscientists, therapists to open the door of change. So the question was how to map psychedelic mechanisms to a generative model. So you have to go into these POMDP extensions, look for the initial prior belief D, and then there's one parameter in order to enable mental plasticity. This is the precision parameter omega norm. By decreasing it, you can weaken the precision weighting of prior D, and in doing so, you can mimic the impact of psychedelics. This is my last slide, just to highlight what we have obtained. So on the y-axis, you have the entropy of the prior belief and versus the unfolding process done by active inference generative model. And there are now two biological agents. The red one is a conventional free energy principle minimizing agent. And here they just overlap. That's why you don't see the red curve. So the red curve is simply a conventional active inference agent doing what it is supposed to do, minimize free energy principle, free energy, and doing so avoid surprise. The blue curve, the blue agent, is undergoing a temporary psychedelic window, and this is able to breach the free energy principle. And you can see here what a difference it does make. So the entropy really jumps up and stays flat. So this is reflecting the psychedelic afterglow. And this result shows that the entropic brain theory really is able to increase entropy. And that's a very, very good characteristic because this is a sign of divergent thinking, which is a hallmark for creativity. That's all from my side. And now, Nika, please take it from here.
Okay, can you stop share so I can share my screen?
Yes, I did.
You did it? Okay. Okay, let's go to my slides. Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Nika and I'll take over the how part and walk you through how we actually implement these generative models and how we refine them using sleep, rest, and psychedelic mechanisms.
And sorry to interrupt you, Nika, but I cannot see your slides properly. I can only see the top
Really?
bar of your screen. Is this only me, or can you see her slides, Martin?
I can't see it either.
So I think it is.
Let me share it again.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
How
Yes,
about now?
perfect. It says Gen AI versus active inference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I told you that I'm gonna explain about the how part and walk you through how we actually implement these generative models and how we refine them using sleep, rest, and psychedelic mechanisms. The first thing we have to do is to understand the difference between generative AI and active inference. Generative AI is a disembodied passive AI, but active inference is embodied. It means that it has an action perception loop that acts in the world. Generative AI has no belief updating after initial training, but active inference has a continuous Bayesian belief updating. We call it the lifelong learning. Generative AI has outputs created without acting in the environment, but AIF actions are selected by inferring posteriors over policies. With generative AI, we have pattern matching perception. It means that the generative AI doesn't understand the outputs it creates, it's just mapping the statistical data from input to output. But with active inference, we have perception as inferences of latent causes, which means active inference actually understands the hidden causes behind everything that happens. The important idea we get inspired by are the mycorrhizal networks. It has three important features that we get inspired by. One of them is branching, so fungal filaments extend into the soil, which mimic outward growth and entropy increase. We are trying to mimic exploration here. With fusing, connections fuse to redistribute nutrients, restoring order and resource consolidation, which we are trying to mimic exploitation. And finally, we have entreating or embodiment, which fruiting bodies emerge to act in the world, bridging digital and biological agency. Now let's talk about how we actually implement this idea in our generative AI model. Generative AI model has forward diffusion and backward denoising. With forward diffusion, we mimic fungi's outward growth and entropy increasing. With backward denoising, we mimic reconnection and resource consolidation. But we also add an extra step here, which is the entreating process, which extends DDPM into an active embodied generative AI. The next thing we do is to model humans as nodes in a graph. So the humans are nodes. We have 64 humans that are connected to each other. We can write the adjacency tensors for them. So in adjacency tensors, when humans are connected to each other, we put a 1. But when they are not connected, we put a 0. We create 1.3 million small word scale-free graph structures with DDPM as our data set. So a small word network has tightly connected groups, and a scale-free network has a few highly connected hubs. And we have a binarization threshold, which is 0.5. When DDPM creates an element over this threshold, we put a 1. When it's under the threshold, we put a 0. And cyberfungi here acts as an adaptive generative AI agent and does dynamic edge rewiring. We try to spread social norms with probability R, which is between 0 and 1. Here is the active inference POMDP-based graphical model. In the next slide, I break down the details and explain it completely. So here we model both human agents and cyberfungi agents. So we have state factors we showed with S, We have control factors or actions, we show it with U. We have observation, which we show it with O. For each of them, we have 4 categories of norm, MB, net, and toke. For norm is saying that it gets 0 or 1. It is saying that whether agent adopt the social norm. And MB, or meta belief, is saying that neighbors specific meta beliefs. It means what I think my neighbor believes. And net is for network, which is showing the network structure, presence, or absence of edges. And toke is for token, which is 0 or 1, and it is whether cyberfungi issue the teleological tokens. With control factors or actions, we have the same 4 categories. UNet and UTOKE are for cyberfungi agency, which, because cyberfungi is doing rewiring, which means adding or pruning edges, and cyberfungi is doing token assignment. But with humans, we have norm and MB, because humans are the ones who adopt the norms, and humans are the ones who update their meta beliefs. With observations, we also have the 4 categories. Here we have the generative model parameters. We have likelihood tensor A, which maps the hidden states to observation probabilities. We have transition matrices, which shows a temporal evolution of beliefs. We have the precision omega norm. When the omega norm is high, we are locking beliefs, and when it's low, it means that beliefs are volatile. And we have priors D and E. D shows initial beliefs over hidden states, but E shows initial states over actions. And preferences, C, is the outcome preferences vector. Next, we have the free energy principle framework. So free energy principle measures the difference between what the agent believes and what's true. Each agent tries to minimize F to reduce surprise and select the optimal action. And we have G, which is expected free energy, which anticipates the value of future outcomes under policy P. The challenge we face with this is because we have 64 humans, we have a 64 binary feature lead to 2 to the power of 64 times 2 to the power of 64 transition or likelihood matrices. This results in a huge computational load. What we do, our solution is to divide 64 into several subfactors. We're choosing the subfactor n sub and divide 64 by it and choose our bits list based on that. So this way, we don't have the huge computational load. We start with a 64 node ring lattice, and we have the spreading probabilities of R 0.5, 0.75, and 1, which we ensure fair comparison with DDPM. The rewiring mechanism is that belief-guided rewiring for social contagion, and we optimize information transformation pathways. And there is a constraint. We limit the rewiring to 3 edges addition per step. Here we have the result. We can see that in this slide, we want to compare DDPM versus active inference results. So the DDPM agent takes 2.5 times longer than the AIF in R equals 1. So when a spreading probability equals to 1, we have DDPM like this. And the active inference agent is 10 times more cost efficient, as you can see here. The next metric we want to look at is the small word index. The small word index, or sigma, quantifies whether a network exhibits a small word properties. So C is the clustering coefficient and L is the shortest path length. We compare it to a random network. A rule of thumb is saying that if sigma is greater than 1, we have a small word property. If you look at here, you can see that the DDPM agent, a small word index goes up to 10, but AIF goes up to 4. So we can conclude that DDPM preserves a small word structure better than AIF. You can see why in the 2 other graphs. So DDPM shortest path length is, here you can see that it's lower, but the clustering coefficient of DDPM is higher. Next, we have belief update dynamics, or data KL. Data KL is calculated from this formula, which measures how much an agent updates its belief from one step to the next step. Large data KL means big aha moments. You can see here that with AIF, we have multiple recurring spikes, which are decreasing over time. But with DDPN, we have only single early peak, which drops down to 0. So Professor Maier completely explained about the darkroom problem. I'm going to focus on the resolution. So the resolution is that the brain, we cannot just look at the brain. We have to look at the brain environment system and minimize the free energy for that. Enlightened room concept is saying that a stimulating and rich environments are the settings that drive learning and exploration. So these kind of settings expand generative models, which allow deeper cognitive penetration. For example, one of these settings could be metaverse, which is a rich environment. Next, we have the neural evidence of brain's dark energy. So the brain uses 60 to 80% energy at rest, and the default mode network, or DMN, is active in rest for simulation, recall, and preparation. So intrinsic brain activity is 20 times external stimulus response, highlighting exploration as a baseline state. So in order to disengage from action perception loop, we propose 3 mechanisms: sleep, rest, and psychedelics. These allow exploration. These allow exploration in our mechanisms. So the first one was the sleep cycle. We do it with Bayesian model reduction, or BMR. The core concept is that Bayesian model reduction prunes redundant connections. This is similar to the sleep cycle of humans, which reduces the model complexity. In sleep cycle of humans, there is no new data coming in. So in absence of new data, what we can do is a complexity minimization, which becomes our priority. So we calculate delta F from this formula. You can see that A is the posterior concentration parameter, A tilde is the prior parameters of the full model, A prime is the edge removal candidate for model reduction, and B is quantifying the model evidence. Our decision rule is that if delta F is smaller than 0, it is in favor of the reduced model, so we remove an edge. There are 2 steps to the sleep cycle. One is resetting priors. So for each hidden state factor, we overwrite prior DF with posterior QF. This naturally removes the KL divergence of QF and DF term. And step 2 is pruning edges. So for each edge U and V, we compute delta F, and if this is smaller than -3, we have a base factor of 20 to 1. So we decide to remove the edge. There is an enhanced BMR cycle that we propose that makes BMR more enhanced, which is consisting of repeating cycles, wake, sleep loop. It means that we have 2 consecutive wake states followed by 1 sleep state, just like as humans sleep. In each wake states, we add 3 edges, but in each sleep states, we remove the weakest 20% of posterior QNet edges, which is up to 10 edges per sleep. Here you can see the result of BMR. In this graph, you can see that the wake-only agent ends up to F of 10, free energy of 10, and our single cycle sleep agent, which sleep starts at the step 500, you can see that it ends at 9.75. So there's a delta F of 0.25 nats here. But in the other one, we have enhanced BMR with multi-cycle sleep. You can see that the F reduction goes from 10.5 to 9.25, which delta F leads to 1.25 nats, which is a 5 times larger reduction. Another metric we investigated is the confidence High confidence means uneven QNet, which means clear agent roles. With low confidence, we have uniform QNet, which means structural uncertainty. You can see that with multi-cycle sleep, we have a higher confidence than the wake-only agent. So the second enhancement we did was generative model refinement through rest. So the neuroscientific foundation is that during rest, the brain exhibits a spontaneous activity across resting state network, or RSN. RSNs maximize spatiotemporal entropy, which refines the brain's generative model. You can see that when we try to map rest phases to PMDP framework, we have 5 steps. First, we disengage from external inputs. Then we suppress the accuracy term here. Then we try to maximize entropy policy sampling and simulate fictive trajectories. You can see that we simulate fictive trajectories with sampling S or hidden states. In the first step, we sample from the prior categorical prior D, and in steps 2 and goes on, we sample from transition matrix B, categorical transition matrix. Then we update the model using these fictive trajectories. Here are the results. We computed 4 metrics. One of them is spatial entropy, which is calculated like this, which measures the diversity of the network clustering. So higher spatial entropy means more distributed and flexible connectivity. You can see that with wake plus rest, we have a higher spatial entropy. Next, we calculate the temporal entropy, which captures the irregularity of norm switching. So it captures the time or how often the norm switching happens. You can say that there is only a slight difference between temporal entropy, which wake plus rest is higher. And next, we calculate a spatiotemporal entropy, which is calculated like this and captures both qualities of spatial entropy and temporal entropy. You can see, again, there is a slight difference between them. Next, we have accuracy, which is the negative expected surprise. It calculates the predictive alignment between beliefs and observation. You can see that with accuracy, actually wake-only agent performs better. So the accuracy is higher because in the previous slide, I said that we are trying to suppress accuracy. This is why this happens. The third refinement that we are trying to do is brain theory unification under psychedelics. So Professor Thurston's recent work merges free energy principle with entropic brain theory, which links computational and neurobiological models into single model. We have precision relaxation with psychedelics like psilocybin, relaxed precision of high-level priors, which fosters openness and cognitive flexibility. Here we have also increased entropy. So psychedelics temporarily increase brain entropy, which allows escape from repetitive patterns of thoughts. And we have expanded accessibility, which the brain expand their accessibility into new states. So empirical findings are prior recalibration, which I explained about, and DMN deactivation. With DMN deactivation, DMN is the default mode network of the brain, which is the part of the brain responsible for self-referential thinking and rigid patterns of thought. Unlike rest or sleep, this disruption breaks habitual mental loops and allows more flexible cognition. And also we have a psychedelic afterglow, which is the period after psychedelics when the effect of the drug wears off, but we are still in a stable position, but we are with more flexible priors. Here are the results. You can see that we calculated cognitive dynamics under psychedelics. So we calculated prior entropy, which calculated like this. which measures uncertainty of priors when entropy is higher, like in the blue agent with psychedelics. You can see that during the psychedelic window from step 500 to step 1000, there is a sudden increase in prior entropy. And with posterior entropy, we need to calculate this posterior entropy because we want to see how the agent has the belief coherence. So how the belief of the agents are coherent to each other. So high synchrony means coherent belief, and low synchrony means enhanced exploration. So here, as you can see, and as we expect, the wake-only agent has higher belief coherence. But the psychedelic agent, belief coherence drops suddenly, but then it goes back to normal. Then here in the last graph, we have all enhanced AIF states like sleep, rest, and psychedelics. You can see that the wake baseline, or the blue curve, is lower than the other. So the prior entropy is lower than the other ones, but you can see that the prior entropy of sleep is higher than the other states. So to wrap everything up, we have active inference as a transformative framework, which goes beyond generative AI. It is a neuroscience-grounded model for AGI, overcoming generative AI reactive data hungry limits. It is 10 times more cost efficient. It has a lifelong learning feature, which has the continuous aha moments, or delta KL spikes, which drives self-improvement and refinement. And also we proposed a solution for the darkroom problem. So here, entropy-driven rest phases like sleep enables AIF to transcend simple surprise minimization. And not only we moved from generative AI to active inference, but we also try to enhance active inference model with those 3 states. Our future direction is we use the metaverse as a rich environment that fosters exploration. So metaverse is merging VR, AR, and MR within 6G networks for ultra low latency, which shows a rich environment. So we actually, up to this point, we implemented a certain level of embodiment through the entreating process. So our cyber fungi don't just grow and fuse like mycorrhizal networks below the ground. Okay, it also should come to act in the world. But for the future, we try to push this even further. We started by being inspired by the underground fungal networks, but real fungi don't stay hidden. They produce mushrooms. These mushrooms are physical, visible, and embodied structures that emerge into the world. So because these are physical and visible structures that emerge into the world, in the same way we want our cyber fungi to come out of the soil and become touchable and interactive agents in the 3D spatial internet, which acts with the holographic type communication. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Nika, and thank you, Martin. Let's, as our custom, unmute our microphones and give Nika and Martin a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very exciting, and what a broad range of both simulation experiments and topics that were at play in this presentation at the same time. So I'm still dizzy from that almost. Now we have a bit of time for discussion and questions and comments from the group. I will keep an eye on the chat and on whether anyone raises their hand. So if anyone has a question or a comment, feel free to either write in the chat or raise their hand. But while people are also just organizing their thoughts for the discussion, which usually is the case, I thought I might just start by asking very briefly, just to frame the discussion and maybe frame the summary afterwards, asking you how you think we can be the most helpful. So if there's specific parts that you would more like our thoughts on, then we can kind of focus on those. Because you showed us a lot of technical stuff, there's also a lot of theoretical stuff, there's the future work, etc. Yeah, if that question makes sense.
Yeah, so you asked me how you can be helpful.
Yeah, basically.
So because we in this slide I showed the future directions. Like I'm looking forward to implementing the 3D spatial internet. So going from the 2D internet to a 3D spatial internet to that is seen with the naked eye. So we want to get past to the holographic type, which is done by which is shown with head-mounted display. So we want to this to be visible with the naked eye, so we can like touch it, like from cyber fungi to mushroom. Okay, and like in the future direction, I appreciate your help and your teams, like so we can build this further. Yeah.
Okay. Ricardo, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes. Hello, Nika. So I did have a question about this work. For that hologram idea, for the spatial computing regime and being able to interact with kind of these interfaces rather from PCs and more towards a design that's more human-like and more human interpretable, and what we're comfortable with. Do you see this going towards a direction of like scaling a 3D world model kind of situation, and then interacting with an inference that can infer each frame, and you can interact by giving actions conditioned on them? Is that what you're picturing, or is there something more
Yeah,
nuanced and specific?
yeah. So as you said, we can like have a word model of 3D holograms. These holograms should be touchable, as I said. And like we do this word model so that it can be more interactive and touchable. So you can interact with each of the holograms. For example, you can give hand cues like this. So the holograms goes like disappears or do something or zooms or everything that you can imagine. Yes. So your answer is yes.
Thank you.
I suppose, I mean, in that kind of work, I suppose there's also just a hardware angle that's quite complicated and so on. Would you, and that's not my expertise whatsoever. But I suppose the things you presented today are more on, let's say, a software or an intelligence angle. Would you say that's right?
It's only software. Yeah, we implemented an embodiment up to one point, but we wish to do this, push this further. Yeah.
And also just a tiny question. The simulations you showed us with the active inference agents, that's the stuff I know the best, of course, because I'm a modeler. Did you do this in PyMDP, or did you code it up yourself or something like this? And I noticed
in
you used Network X. Okay.
Yeah, in PyMDP, yeah.
Okay. And so it seems to me, and you may correct me if I completely misunderstand, or Carl may correct me later on. But it seems you essentially use active inference to build the network between the different agents,
Yeah.
right, at the same time, which is an exciting idea, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when I simulate multi-agent interaction, I usually just have, and in my work it's very simple. You can have agents put in some kind of networks, and then they take actions and they affect each other, and behavior might spread or beliefs might spread, etc. Again, it's not my primary specialization, but there's work out there doing that with active inference agents also. Usually, I'm used to thinking of maybe every node being one agent.
Yeah. Every
And
node
then,
is a human agent, and the
yeah,
cyber fungi is another agent, which is
yeah,
the rewiring thing. Yeah.
yeah. So you have a kind of, let's say, an outside network manager agent that
Yeah.
can
Sure.
rewire the network. Yeah, exactly. And so in your simulations here, or maybe more generally, would you have both of those types as agents as separate active inference agents, or are they more built into the same system? So is it one active inference agent looking at the network and rewiring it, and
So
other
there are
agents
two
in
different agents. Why?
right?
Because the generative AI, the active inference parameters are different. Like if you look at this slide, I said that, for example, UNet and UTalk is only for the cyberfungi agent, and
Yeah,
UNorm
exactly.
and UMB, this is the like little difference between them. So the cyberfungi agent only memorizes the network construction and doing the rewiring and token assignment, but humans are adopting the norm, so that each human should know whether I adopt a norm or not, or whether its neighbor is adopting a norm or not.
Yeah, exactly. Similar to some of these, there are some other kinds of norm adoption simulations without network rewiring that I know of. You know what I, yeah. So it's very exciting to add this dynamic network growth as you go. Okay. So when you then add, so make the agents take psychedelics, so to speak, or make them sleep, which of these agents are doing the psychedelics? All of them or some of them, etc.?
No, like when we are doing the sleeps, they are only sleeping. They are only sleeping. They have their, for example, the awake-wake sleep cycle. So like humans that have two wake cycles and one sleep cycle. So humans sleep for 8 hours into 24 hours. These agents has wake sleep cycles. So they are wake. When they are awake, they are doing the free energy minimization. But when they are asleep, we do the enhancement thing.
It was quite exciting to see the Bayesian model reduction part. Yeah, it's also not my. I haven't worked on that specifically, but I know this is often proposed as a theory of what happens during sleep, right? That the model is reduced based on simulation. But is that?
And also in a sleep we drop the new data, so observations is cancelled.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You close your eyes, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the full sensory system. But was this, maybe I'm completely mistaken, and these are two separate simulations? The sleep-wake cycle simulation?
So
Yeah,
the
good.
sleep simulation results are here. Let me see. This is for sleep. Okay, we only compare wake only with sleep cycles, but also we compared with single cycle sleep and multi-cycle sleep. The multi-cycle sleep, the wake sleep. And we saw that the multi-cycle sleep acts better, but with psychedelics we have the psychedelic window from 500 to 1,000. So after that, we don't inject the psychedelics into the system. Then so we can see the afterglow effect.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That you by increasing the entropy, you can get into a different state, which then is where you stay. And do you ever combine, for example, sleep and psychedelics in some way, or these are kept separate in the simulation, right?
No, we didn't combine it, but that's a good idea actually.
I don't know if it's a good idea.
And sleep and psychedelic, like putting a psychedelics and then sleep.
I'm sure these things.
You probably start to get weird dreams.
I actually have a friend who's working in the lab that Carhart Harris used to run, and they said they were giving psychedelics to people while sedated, and to people where they also gave them a drug that blocked them from creating memories to try and disentangle if it's the memories that are. And the reason this reminds me of it is just now that you said it, that I guess it is a good question of whether the effect of psychedelics would be different if you were engaging in a sleep-wake cycle or not.
Yeah, that
Right?
is a good.
Because I suppose, unless I misunderstand you, in this case, the effect of the psychedelics is just increasing the entropy of the D matrix. Is that right?
The prior entropy. So we have flexible priors. We don't think the priors are rigid anymore.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah,
flexible
exactly.
priors to explore more in the world.
Yeah. Which task or which situation are these agents in? Like what kind of inputs do they get exactly? Is that the same as the ones in the network?
Yeah, it's the same network rewiring thing. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay. I hope I'm also just making sure I understand what this presentation was, because as I was saying, there's sleep, there's psychedelics, there's network social norm development, there's network rewiring, there's the very exciting kind of this image of the fungi food network that acts as a huge brain in its own right, etc. So, okay, let me see if I have some better questions than this, just trying to understand and so on. Yes. Okay, so I just wanted to briefly mention, do you know David Hyland by any chance?
I don't know.
The reason I mention him is just because I know that he works, so it's a very different perspective, but a similar situation, where in his work, you have a set of agents and they interact, and you have a different agent that has to devise some rules for them to interact in a way that makes their common good as possible. So you could imagine a politician or something, a king trying to devise a country where people are doing well.
Yeah.
And I thought that was probably a bit similar to the network rewiring that shapes the interactions between agents. And so I know he has this work on free energy equilibria. So ways to get agents into places where where they converge on one way to act that minimizes their free energy, etc. So that was just a name. Then maybe I can find some of his literature later and send to you.
Okay.
That I thought you might find interesting. There's no mushrooms in it and no fungi, but a similar kind of topic. This high scale multi-agent activations. Oh, and I see Ricardo has their hand raised.
Yes, I had another question actually. I was quite interested in seeing the comparison between Gen AI and active inference. I wanted to also ask, on that slide where you were discussing that, do you see a model currently that gets closer to what we would call an active inference agent, unlike maybe Gen AI that is still missing some of those key points?
So with another model, you mean another generative model, like DDPM, like variational encoders, GAN, or something?
As in maybe not the standard ML architectures like VAEs and GANs, etc., but more of like a nuanced, scaled model that works for production use cases. So, for example, like there's completely new architectures that are not much like that. Like, have you heard of architectures maybe like Dreamcoder by chance?
I haven't heard of Dreamcoders specifically, but like DDPM is and other generative AI models are so data hungry, and so they have the higher cost efficiency. So with active inference, we try to make it better, but it was 10 times the token efficiency. So like the model you're proposing should be so good with this efficiency. This efficiency was so good for us, and we saw it and said, this is it. This is the model that we are talking about. But can you please explain more about the Dreamcoders?
Yeah, so Dreamcoder does have this kind of like wake and sleep cycle already integrated into its training paradigm. But what it does is essentially it has this DSL, so domain specific language. It works upon this to create functions that then together can make a composition of bigger functions during its training. So it will start with the base DSL, so very primitive actions. And it's barely compositional. It barely learns to do composition, but over time, it learns to grow this abstraction library for its own use case, and it's all differentiable. So what you get to see.
Does it need the data to train on, or not? Like, is it like active inference? Because we are trying to get past the data, and like we are trying to get past the data hungry limits of generative AI models.
Yeah, so in this, it's not only about the training, but I think it's also the architecture design is very specific. It's a nuanced, that's a nuanced topic, but I would say more of like in a general case scenario, how would you so you're saying you would have to test it directly on this to know if it's
Yeah.
closer to active inference. Okay.
Yeah,
Do you know
yes.
do you know if there's something like a repository or something that runs this that already has this available to test?
We didn't upload it, and the data set here, as you can see, the data set is created by ourselves. I have uploaded the data set, so you can start from there, but the code not yet. I try to upload it later, and so you can compare the active inference code with your dream. What was it? Dream code?
Dreamcoder, yeah.
Yeah, Dream
From Alice
Yeah, I
Exxon.
tried to upload it, but the data set is online now. Data set of 1.3 million small word scale-free graph structures. You can download the data set and run your model on that to see what happens, what you get as result. You can try to measure these two. Let's see. These two measurements here. Yeah. Here, you can try to, with the data set that you download, you can try to measure the social contagion of all nodes and also teleological token actuation and see how does this, how is this performance compared to the AIF.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Very exciting.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the audience? Then I have just a final brief question before we let Carl take his turn, if that's okay. And this is shamelessly related to my own work. so, so maybe I'm just asking for your impressions and how it might relate to yours. And so I've done some of that one work where we have agents and we have multiple agents and they interact, but at the same time we treat a group of agents as one agent in its own right.
Yeah.
So that there are two, let's say there are three levels of description. One is what happens within a single agent. Another is how they interact and whether that's good or bad for them. And a third is the group as if it was one agent level, where the group also has one generative model. So that, let's say there are 10 people, each of them has their own generative model, but together they also are company.
They have one goal in common and they're trying to reach that.
Or that there's a
Some kind of
different generative model, potentially different generative model held by the group as a unit.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I ask about this, except for that I'm interested in, is also because you talk about this metaphor of the fungal network, right? Where you have many little components that interact, but they also form one whole, and maybe that whole can be seen as one organism. So, of course, in active inference, the formal criteria for when you're being licensed to say that something is a whole that also has its own active generative model would be that it has a Markov blanket.
Yeah. This is like a good idea for exploring more for one agent when they have only one goal. Like for example, here we can put the goal as a rewiring and do the token assignment. But for example, with here that we just assign token assignment to cyber fungi, okay? So with this, we can put this as a whole, but we should redefine the model so that the humans also are responsible for token assignment. So this would be like, yeah, a little more complicated. So the humans like inside the model, but they only have a control from outside. Yeah, this could be interesting.
And would you say that the whole network could also be seen as one agent if it had an environment?
Yeah, it can also be seen as one agent. Yeah, if we redefine them. So if we redefine what each agent does and what is its agency, it can be seen as a whole. Yeah.
Very, very interesting work, Nika. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also thanks to Martin. So now I think, unless there are any last minute questions or comments from the audience, that it is time to pass the baton and the turn to Carl.
Is it my turn now?
Yes, I think so.
Hi, Professor.
Hello. Yeah, that was a remarkable presentation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, very impressive. And a little bit like Peter, I'm a little bit overwhelmed. There is so much that you've done and so many ideas that you've covered. It's going to be difficult for me to sort of touch on everything that you've brought to the table. So I'm just going to focus on things that I partially understood. And we could spend hours, or I could spend hours asking you questions about the implementation and the technical details in terms of the structure of the generative models and the like. But we don't have time for that. So I'm just going to guess what you have done and just ask you a few questions to make sure that my guess is correct. And then, as usual, try to summarize, what from the perspective, or my perspective anyway, are the innovations here and the things that would, I think would deserve foregrounding to particular audiences. And then go through a few papers, which I suspect you have already read, but if you haven't, they would be useful points of reference for developing this work, or at least pointing to related work that underwrites some of the things that you've done. But you've done an enormous amount. The motivation. Well, let me just ask. Could I summarize what you are trying to do along the following lines, that you are effectively building ecosystems or networks inspired by the root wide web in a way that enables you to model the edges or connections or the adjacency matrix in a graph as agents themselves. So could I interpret the fungi as agents that are the edges, and the nodes would be simulated humans? Would that be one way of looking at it? That you've got two kinds of agents in the ensemble. One kind would be the nodes, and the other kinds would be the edges, and the edges determine which nodes speak to each other. Would that be?
Yeah. Sure.
Excellent. Okay, so that to my mind is a very novel idea. I haven't seen that before, and I think that that simple idea should be foregrounded in any communication or presentation or any publications that you have done or what you are considering doing. It's important because it sort of speaks to I think the next kind of expressiveness of generative models generally within the free energy principle and active inference, which is now having edges as latent variables that are context sensitive. And what you've done is that beyond the fact that they are dynamic and can be redeployed, much in the spirit of random graph theory. I don't know if you've come across this, but this is where the edges themselves are random variables, and you look at the rewiring of the statistical behavior of random graphs. But when used as the basis of a probabilistic graphical model, now you're saying that the edges themselves are now state dependent, context dependent. You've gone further than that and said not only that, but their updating is itself that which can be ascribed to being an agent. The edge is actually now an agent, if I understand what you've done, which I think is a really interesting idea. And as you've noted, is nicely licensed by nature and by being biomimetic and having this root wide web and the mycorrhizal enabling of ecosystems of plants or of trees in this instance. Okay, so that's one thing. The other big thing that you've brought to the table is is this focus on Bayesian model reduction and the various implementations, and then also equip this with another approach to self-organization in this particular formulation of a distributed or federated system of multiple agents, and using the relaxation of certain prior beliefs and the precisions on those prior beliefs just to facilitate a generalized synchronization or a coherent. I can't remember how you expressed it, but you measured it in terms of the coherence of the beliefs among agents, towards the end. So that also, I think, is a really interesting issue in the sense that it could also be cast as structure learning. So if we think about things like sort of probabilistic inductive logic programming, radical constructivism, or Bayesian model selection in active inference, then you are now addressing, I think, a really key issue is how do you learn the right kinds of structures in this instance of the connectivity or the edges that enable a joint free energy minimizing solution that just is this coherent generalized synchrony. Would that be a useful way of summarizing what is that summary apt for what you're doing?
Yeah, that was perfect. Yeah, that
Okay,
was a perfect summary.
good. Okay. Right. So I'm just as a comment upon the comparison with generative AI and active inference. You make the point very powerfully in this particular slide that's on the screen at the moment that it's obvious that in terms of self-organization to a joint free energy minimizing non-equilibrium steady state, obviously, the active inference is going to win because the generative AI doesn't learn, it can't adapt. It is built not to be context sensitive. So that I say that as an excuse not to have to comment upon the diffusion models of the generative AI because that's not my field of expertise. But just just to acknowledge that there is a comparison there. So. And also, of course, yeah, your objective here is to simulate and to understand the mechanics of distributed belief updating on among multiple agents of different kinds that that maximizes their joint marginal likelihood or model evidence so that they can live on this sort of generalized synchrony or evince a generalized synchrony or live on the synchronization manifold. So there's no prescription other than they all understand and communicate in the most parsimonious and efficient way with each other. So the token efficiency, could I read that basically as a measure of the overall complexity of the belief updating and the implicit generative models? Would that
Yeah,
be?
exactly. Yeah, because as the agent here is the cyber fungi agent is you consider this as edges, okay? And as the edges grow, we have more tokens because when there is a connection between two humans, and so they have more connection to each other, so they can spread the belief so easily. But the overall complexity of the network becomes so much more in the DDPM that it is like a crowded edged network. But here with like you can say with 10 times less edges, we have the more like the similar efficiency in terms of social contagion of all nodes.
I see, that's nicely expressed. Okay, so the social contagion is basically the efficiency with which I can spread and I can synchronize my belief updating. And you're saying that basically if you use the right objective function and the right calculus or the right belief updating scheme, you can do it with a much sparser connectivity, and that is measured by the number of tokens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that perspective, I think, is also very useful. The notion that the right kind of distributed, federated, decentralized belief updating inherits when you have sparse coupling. I think that's really important because it is a current debate among certain people about the utility or the danger of overconnectivity, certainly in terms of social media, for example. And and there are many levels you can unpack that. And if you're demonstrating that the sparsity is, as a key measure of complexity, is a very important characteristic of efficient belief, social contagion, efficiency of belief sharing and synchronization or coherence of that belief sharing. I think that's an important observation because it tells you don't want a dense World Wide Web, you want a sparse one. And that's really important to know from an engineering perspective, but also in designing in designing sort of the next generation of the for example, the spatial web, which is what I'm most familiar with. Okay, and then again, I don't fully understand, but I'd be very interested to see your developments over the years. You want to actually demonstrate this in a metaverse, which I presume is some kind of simulated environment, just as a proof of principle. Yeah, okay, but I'm not going to speak to that because it's a long way outside my comfort zone. Right. Yeah. So my again, coming back to your conversations with Peter, I think he was right to point out or to intimate that the sort of the Bayesian model reduction part was, I think, and the sleep and the wake sleep simulations were, I think, conceptually different from the psychedelic reducing precision. And to my mind, they represent very different routes to enabling the efficiency of attaining, from a dynamical systems perspective, a generalized synchronization or synchronization of chaos from a dynamical systems perspective. One is predicated on structure learning and Bayesian model reduction and removing redundant parameterizations from the generative models. The other one, I would cast in terms of increasing the learnability. So before I unpack that, can I just ask you, technically, how did you reduce the precision of the priors over the initial states? Did you have a Gibbs parameterization, or did you use a Dirichlet count? What was the functional form of the D vectors encoding the initial priors?
In BMR or sleep, you mean?
No, in the psychedelics
In
one.
psychedelics, like
Yeah.
here in psychedelics. So here, as you can see, we have to like relax the precision of priors. So there was a omega norm precision. So when we take this higher, it has locked in beliefs. But when we take this lower, it has like a relaxed priors. And we put we just changed the omega norm.
Okay, so effectively, that would be like assuming a Gibbs distribution over the vector. So the omega now plays the role of an inverse temperature or precision that allows you to continuously manipulate the precision of the negentropy. I see. And so is that available in PyMDP? Or is that something you had to write in by yourself?
Yeah, that was done in PyMDP.
Oh, they have an omega for, right. I didn't know that. Okay, right. Yeah, just technically, for your interest, there are two ways to parameterize priors and posteriors over categorical states. You can either use a Dirichlet parameterization, or you can use a Gibbs form with some sort of base distribution, probability distribution over the different states, and then an inverse temperature parameter or precision parameter, such as, you know, I presume the omega that you've used. The equivalent, if you've done it with Dirichlet counts, and at some point you might want to do this, because you can actually now condition the initial states on a deep generative model, so that you've got sort of slowly updating states, say, of the human agents, or possibly even the edge agents, that evolve slowly, and then you can now treat your D vector as now a tensor that now gathers information from the deeper states to produce now an initial condition for some sequence of updates at the lower level, which is usually much faster. And you can learn that. So you can learn your initial conditions, your prior beliefs, before you actually start a sequence of updates from the initial priors. So if you did that kind of thing, or even if you didn't, if you just wanted to write down your D in terms of Dirichlet counts, the equivalent of the precision would be the total number of counts. So if you wanted a very precise initial belief, then you would have lots of Dirichlet counts. Let's just say sort of on and off, or sort of social norm versus not social norm, or you know, conformed or not. Then if you had a very precise belief that was say 128 and 8, then you're going to have lots of observations before you change that, because each observation you're just adding 1 to either. So if I have one observation, I've now just changed it to 128 to 9. So the relative probability is almost the same as it was before the observation, which was 128 to 8. So that, you know, the ratio has only changed a little bit. But if I start off with something more like 8 to 1, no, 16 to 1, then if I have one observation, I increase, say, the 1, and it now goes from 16 to 2. And now the ratio, the difference in the ratios, if you like, or the probability, the distributions, is now greater. And in the limit, of course, if you're starting off with just 1 and 1, then one observation means that one, either norm versus not norm, is now twice as likely as the other one. So what that gives you is a sense that when you reduce the precision of anything, but including the initial conditions, but you could also apply this to the probability transition matrices as well. So in neurobiology, that's sometimes associated with arousal and noradrenergic discharge. But from your point of view, I think it'd be quite sufficient just to focus on the initial conditions. What that gives you is a sense that if your agent starts off with a very low precision initial prior, or prior over the initial states, it's very impressionable. It learns very, very quickly. It updates its beliefs a lot with each observation. So that you can think of it as a sort of baby agent, or a very naive agent that, you know, can be impressed upon by seeing what just 1 or 2 or a small number of observations, as opposed to a very old, grumpy, stuck in its ways agent that has hundreds and hundreds of Dirichlet counts. It's seen hundreds of things in the past. It's wise. It's not going to, and it takes a lot more for it to change its mind. So I think that story, again, I'm thinking about how you'd present this to an audience. That story is that you can render your psychedelic intervention basically converts a group of old, grumpy, wise agents into lots of excitable, impressionable young baby agents. And of course, they're going to learn much more quickly. And of course, if they can learn much more quickly, and you've got a dynamic environment which is co-constructed by the other agents and the edge agents, then they're going to find the free energy joint free energy solution much more quickly than if they're all grumpy and wise and they're not taking their psychedelics. So that would be one perspective on the mechanism that you can use to increase the exploration of parameter space that gets you more quickly to a joint free energy minimizing solution, which is, to my mind, a very different kind of mechanism from the Bayesian model reduction, which is more about making each model as efficient and as simple as possible, which of course will certainly help in terms of optimizing the evidence for your model of everything else that's going on around you, and that's true for everything that's part of that network. But that does strike me as a different kind of mechanism to the same end, which is a maximally efficient kind of decentralized or federated inference and belief sharing. The coming to the sort of Bayesian model reduction, I noticed that you started off by talking about sort of the dark room problem and the fusion and the casting the sort of the balance between exploration and exploitation in a way that could be understood in terms of the entropy of the system. I have to say, when you were talking, I interpreted that much more in terms of the minimization of complexity. So I know that you started off, or Martin started off by sort of using the dark room problem to say it's actually, there is a solution to the dark room problem, which depends upon exploration. I think there's another way of motivating the dark room, which takes you straight to one of the two key mechanisms you've been exploring to augment and to optimize this decentralized kind of belief updating. And that's just to remind people that in the dark room you are asleep. And when you're asleep, you have an opportunity to minimize your complexity. And that would take you straight to the Bayesian model reduction part of the story, and the sleep story, and the rest and the introspection side of things, as opposed to saying that there's a sort of explore-exploit dilemma. Just for your interest, the whole Bayesian model, well, active inference in and of itself, but certainly the whole Bayesian model reduction story was a response to the darkroom problem. Because the darkroom problem only really makes any sense if you ignore action. So the darkroom problem, in terms of I'm going to update my beliefs in order to minimize my surprise, is just a statement of the mechanics of sense making and perception. It's got nothing to do with action. But of course, the darkroom problem is basically all about what am I going to do in the dark room. And as soon as you now look at the imperatives that underwrite action, we're now talking about expected free energy. So as soon as you do that, you're talking about expected information gain and epistemic value and all the drives for exploration. So that would be one way that you would start with the darkroom problem, but where you would end up with a real focus on the intrinsic motivation, the salience, the novelty, the expected information gain part of the expected free energy. That's a great story, and because you used MDP, and indeed you had it on your slides, you're using that sort of that aspect of exploration, that this epistemic affordance, responding to epistemic affordances as part of the belief updating. But notice that hasn't got very much to do with the Bayesian model reduction. The Bayesian model reduction is much more about how can you optimize your model in the absence of any data or observations of the kind that you would have if you were in a dark room. And of course, as you know, the only way you can optimize your model or minimize the free energy is to minimize the complexity. And how do you do that? Well, you can then use basic model reduction in exactly the way you've done. I guess what I'm trying to say to you is that if you start with the dark room problem and its solution, you would normally end up with epistemic value and the motivations for responding to being in a dark room, which is not in the same direction of travel. And that would be things like planning as inference and curiosity and novelty seeking, information seeking. That's not quite in the same direction that you would want to go if you wanted to sell Bayesian model reduction, the importance of introspection and sleep and thinking about things, and getting back to this nice sparse minimal complexity representation or implicit representation, in the interactions. So I'm putting that there just because there are a number of stories you could tell. And it might be, if you just think about the different stories you can tell, I think sometimes you have to sort of winnow down and just focus on one story per presentation, per audience, per paper. You have a choice now. Do you talk about the expected information gain as part of the expected free energy, or do you talk about the complexity of the variation free energy and how that can be minimized? Or both, but you're going to have to sort of put one in the footnote and focus on the other. That was a part of my feedback. Well, if you'll allow me, I'll just now quickly go through a few papers. Given the sophistication of your work, I'm pretty sure you've seen all these papers, but just for completeness, I'll just quickly go through and explain why I thought you might be interested in revisiting them if you have already read them, or right. Could I ask you to stop sharing so that that allows me to share, and then hopefully I can do. Yes, and I can share that, and then hopefully you can see me and the screen. So as I say, in no particular order. This you mentioned scale free. Small world networks quite a lot, and clearly it was interesting that you sort of to create some data for your generative AI, you sort of generated lots of small world networks, and it's interesting to us why are small world networks so prevalent, and I suspect you could argue that small world networks have a particular sparsity structure that just is the best kind of non-redundant structure, maximally efficient token minimizing, complexity minimizing structure to explain any world. And by any world, I mean any world that has that conforms to the renormalization group. And then you can turn that on its head and say that indeed, in some instances, people use the renormalization group or the scale invariance it inherits from the renormalization group that implies this kind of sparse scale-free sparsity to build good generative models. And that's exactly what we did in this particular paper, which has the odd title From Pixels to Planning. But as part of the introduction, there's a nice references to nice reviews of using the renormalization group as the basis of any generative model. So this is, if you like, starting from my network has to have a small world structure read as basically instantiating the renormalization group. And then from that, building generative models that are maximally efficient. So I'm just making the point that you can, should you want to, motivate the sort of scale-free networks from the perspective of this generic or rather ubiquitous aspect of any world that has some scale invariance from the perspective of the renormalization group. And of course, that's what the kind of connectivity that you'd expect to see when you get your sparsely coupled agents in your web. Yeah, this paper is potentially just interesting for you in that speaks to the importance of having a low precision in order to learn from your teachers, from the people you are connected to at the moment. So, just heuristically, if what you're aiming for is the most efficient kind of communication and co-construction of your niche, and you want to explain to people why is it that the psychedelics are so good at enabling that minimization of joint free energy and the coherence and the belief sharing. One way of explaining to people is, well, I've basically rendered all my agents now very impressionable, and that means they can learn very, very quickly. And this paper was just, as with all of these papers, they deal with a much simpler problem than you are dealing with, but they have sort of stories to tell. And the story that this paper tells is if you just got two agents, in this example, just two birds that were singing to each other, but they don't start off with the same generative model, but to minimize their joint surprisal, they have to learn the same generative model, so it becomes the shared generative model. Then the point being made in this paper is if one of the birds has a very low precision, a psychedelic prior, then it will learn from the bird that doesn't have the low precision, has a high precision. So this induces a skew product system or a sort of master-slave, teacher, student, parent, child-like relationship that just depends upon the precision. It only depends upon the precision. And now if you can imagine two children learning from each other, playing together, you can see how you're going to have a much more efficient, in a dynamic environment, a much more efficient way of getting there. So the key, I can't remember the so yes, it's not a particularly good one, but the point of this final graphic here was to show that the low precision bird sort of moves more quickly to the high precision bird when they're talking to each other and they're communicating, in this instance through bird song, and the end state of that is collapsing onto this synchronization manifold that I imagine that you would be measuring with the coherence measures in terms of the shared belief updates. I just put this paper up because of I don't know if you're I don't know if you've read it, but if you haven't, it's just an interesting. If you go to the appendix of this paper, you'll find the sort of neurobiological basis of that omega that you used. So if you've used a Gibbs parameterization and you've got this one precision parameter for the D vector, then in the neurobiological literature, one can associate that with various neurotransmitters. And at the end of this paper are the derivations of the equations that I assume you're using in PyMDP. And you can now go through and see which particular neurotransmitter is your synthetic psilocybin working on, or your synthetic psychedelic working on. This was a paper by Thomas Parr. Have you seen this paper? Have you gone through the maths? No. I will be interested because I haven't looked at the PyMDP code for some time, but for your entertainment, if you go straight to the appendix and see where omega is derived and make sure that PyMDP has implemented that. And when you've done that, you can then work out, and I'm just looking for grief, a long paper. I'm looking for a table and I can't find it. My apologies. There's a nice table in here that links the various precision parameters for various tensor operators or tensor likelihoods and transition priors to neurotransmitters in the brain. So if you just wanted to give your simulations a bit more of a biomimetic substance or flesh, you could say this would be equivalent to giving a drug that blocks dopamine receptors, for example, or adrenergic receptors, or increases them. It's not going to change your maths or your simulations, but it'll just provide a bit of a biomimetic backstory from the point of view of neuroscience. I suspect you have read this. This is work by people like Connor Hines and colleagues, just looking at the spread of ideas. And I presume you have read this. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. So you've got all the sort of and I think this is the one that did it use a POTS model for the local interactions? I can't remember. If it does, it's interesting because that sort of Potts spin glass kind of model is very often where physicists start with the renormalization group. So the importance of local interactions, which you hinted at earlier on, surfaces in physics as spin block groupings in the renormalization group operators. So, it's quite a ubiquitous notion that you start off with this local interactions, and then you look at the emergent properties under the constraint that your tokens only allow you to, or the edge agents, the fungi, only allow you to to communicate with your local neighbors in some metric space or in some suitably defined lattice. And if I remember, I think that sort of constraint was in this paper. Maybe wrong. Yeah, you've obviously made the link between Bayesian model reduction, creativity, curiosity, and insight. So I put this up before I saw that you'd actually use the Bayesian model reduction. So I'm assuming you're completely familiar with that. This is the final paper. Have you come across this federated inference and belief sharing paper?
No, I don't think so.
Again, it's not going to change anything, but it just lends a little bit more. It lends one particular endorsement or substance to the things that you've already implemented. Again, this is an illustration of active inference in a very simple toy context, just with not a whole 64 agents, but just 2 agents. But it does have some, if you like, aspects which that you have also illustrated. And in particular, what this paper is doing is basically showing that communication and belief sharing is an emergent property of dyadic, or in this instance triadic, interactions when you share the same world. And of course, the whole point of your simulation is that all your agents are sharing the same world because they're co-construct, they constitute the same world and co-construct it together. But there's one particular point at the end where, through this process of joint free energy minimization, they increase the structural complexity of their generative models that enables them to recognize the messages that are being passed between them on the edges. Now, in this instance, the structural complexity is effectively the degree of sparsity. So it's a statistical, it's the inverse of it's a sparsity, basically. So the greater the structural complexity, the smaller the number of tokens, because there's more zeros in this instance likelihood mappings. So I just thought that would be another argument, which is unpacked from different perspectives in the discussion here by a number of people, another argument as to why you'd expect to see efficiency expressed in terms of the minimization of the number of tokens and the sparsity of the communication that is now most efficient when it comes to belief sharing and federated inference and communication among multiple agents that all share the same, the same world. And that's it. That was my that last web page was the Active Inference Symposium, which I'm slowly working my way through. Have you presented at the Active Inference Institute?
No, I wasn't I couldn't to reach to the paper's deadline. So that's why I couldn't present.
I mean, it might be, I think there'll be a lot of people who'd be interested in your work. It might be worthwhile asking whether you could do an active inference live stream, so that there's some easily. Have you got many? Do you have a presentation or a YouTube of your work that people can go to go through slowly?
No.
Now, it might be a good idea just to contact the Active Inference Institute and say that, you know, if you want to, that I strongly recommended you to do so, and ask them about the possibility of doing a live stream. What that will give you is basically a YouTube resource that you can point people to so that they can watch it slowly and pause and think about it and then go through. It also will give you an opportunity to unpack you know, the various aspects of the story. I'd recommend you just focus on one or two. You know, don't cover too much because you'll frighten people. So just focus on, you know, sort of one or two key points that you want to make, and then unpack it slowly, and then you will have a documentary evidence and a link to a YouTube channel that will be endorsed by the Active Inference Institute, that will describe what you're doing, so that then if you wanted to, you know, get master's students or collaborators to understand what you're up to, then you can ask, well, watch this first and see if what we are doing is interesting for you. And that, you know, I think that might be quite a useful way to get some feedback beyond this kind of you know, exchange.
Yeah.
Peter, would you recommend that?
For sure. You can write the Daniel Friedman, or if you want, I can put you in touch as well. That's easier. At the Active, they have a lot of yes. Just basically write me afterwards, Nika, if you would like me to put you in touch with some of the people there.
Yeah, sure. That's a good idea.
I've finished now. I haven't got any.
Good.
I can't think of anything else to say.
I was just making sure I didn't cut you off, Carl.
No.
Okay, then we're reaching the conclusion of this very, very interesting and to me also thought-provoking meeting. As our last gesture of respect, let's do a last round of applause, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Get in touch, Nika and Martin, if I can do anything afterwards. And
We will.
Sure,
other than
sure.
that,
And
nice
Carl,
evening.
thank you very much for these insights and long feedback. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your
Bye.
time.
Enjoy
Bye.
the evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.